Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in Washington. Last week, after President Obama's State of the Union speech, a lot of critics from the left were saying that President Obama's speech appealed more to Republican voters than to his quote-unquote base. There wasn't that much of what they said was a progressive message, that the speech was more about tax cuts and such than it was about anything else. Now joining us to give his take on the speech is Bob Pollin. Bob is the founder and co-director of the Perry Institute in Amherst, Massachusetts. Thanks for joining us, Bob.
Thank you very much for having me, Paul.
So what's your take, Bob? Do you agree with this criticism?
I actually have a different impression. I think that he said some good things from a progressive standpoint. Whether there's any follow-through, is, in my view, has always been the issue. Let me just cite a few of the good things. Number one, that he recognized that we have experienced a jobs crisis before the recession hit. That was a long-term crisis, very much tied to loss of manufacturing jobs and the globalization and U.S. workers having to compete in a global labor market, and that is absolutely true. It's a very serious problem. Now, again, whether he's serious about doing anything about it is another matter. I think he made some good points with respect to promoting manufacturing in this country, including in the energy sector, so that we could construe that as advancing something like an industrial policy. Now, of course, whether he means it and what the details are.
But his motto was auto industry, General Motors, which, you know, the restructuring or strategy was cut workers' wages, cut down the size of the workforce. I don't know if that's much of a progressive model.
No, obviously, like I said, the details matter a lot. Industrial policy, giving credit, subsidies, giving support for technical innovation in manufacturing, in my view, is positive and necessary. Now, obviously, the terms in which this occurs are really what matters. The devil's in the details. Look, I certainly agree that the model of industrial policy does have to support investments, but it obviously has to support decent wages. It has to support the rights of workers to organize, and that's the framework. And there was some of what Obama said in his speech that I thought was supportive of that. It's very important to recognize that prior to our economic collapse, U.S. workers had suffered wage declines or stagnation for a generation while productivity doubled. So all the gains of productivity were flowing up to the top, and that's the basis of inequality in the country. So to talk about a revival of manufacturing, in my view, means a revival of decent employment in manufacturing. Now, that may not have been what he had in mind, but he didn't say that wasn't what he had in mind.
But when he goes to the GM model, then you kind of, like, one of the parts of the GM model was banning strikes.
Well, obviously, I'm not in favor of banning strikes. And he, you know, I don't really believe that I don't believe, at least, I don't think we've gone so far down a neoliberal path that we are, anybody in the Democratic Party or even many Republicans are going to favor banning strikes. I mean, they did try that in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, and actually it seems to have failed. So I don't think that, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm naive, I don't think that's seriously on the agenda. The other thing, this support for manufacturing, for a new energy sector, for investments in energy efficiency, which he emphasized a lot, all of that's good. The part that I found most disturbing in the whole discussion around energy was his emphasis on supporting natural gas. Because of these new natural gas discoveries and his apparent enthusiasm and the enthusiasm of other people for hydraulic fracking as a technology. What we really need to focus on is investing in clean technology and energy efficiency.
What did you make of the proposal, which I think he says he's going to do by executive order and not wait for Congress? And I didn't quite understand the proposal, which is something to do with using public lands and that the Navy's going to buy a certain amount of clean energy from this new kind of development on public lands. Do you know what that proposal is about?
I don't know the details of that proposal, but the fact is that, you know, the single biggest consumer of energy in the U.S. economy, maybe in the world as an entity, is the Pentagon. And of course, I'm in favor of cutting the Pentagon budget, as we've discussed many times, but as long as we're going to have a military budget in the range of hundreds of billions of dollars, let's move that. Look, that's the way that the internet got incubated, through the Pentagon budget. I would rather see the clean energy agenda get incubated outside the Pentagon, but as long as we have the Pentagon, let's push investments in solar, wind, geothermal technologies within the Pentagon as well as every place else.
And what did you make of the opening 75% or approving 75% of the request for, I think it was offshore drilling, wasn't it?
No, of course. The support for oil and gas, in particular, his support for expanding natural gas was terrible for the environment, is not good for jobs. Look, natural gas has this kind of halo around it, as if it's a really strong alternative fossil fuel that's much cleaner than coal and oil. Natural gas is maybe, in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions per unit of energy created, is maybe 10% more clean than petroleum. That's it. So let's kind of get away from this notion that natural gas is somehow a clean alternative to an economy driven by petroleum and coal.
Right. The other, he said he wants to cut the oil subsidies, tax subsidies to oil, which I guess he said before. But he doesn't say anything about biofuels, which you've talked about before, and many of the people we've talked about. The subsidization and expansion of corn-based biofuel is one of the biggest factors for creating food bubble prices, but there doesn't seem to be anything about changing that.
Not only is it implicated in the food bubble, but biofuels based on corn ethanol are not even any cleaner. You know, just like natural gas, they are essentially not much cleaner, if at all, than petroleum. So when we talk about biofuels, we have to be very careful that we're talking about biofuels that come out of non-food crops, and that the refining process has to itself be done with renewable energy. That's the only way that biofuels ends up being clean at all.
What else would you have liked to seen in this, even given the kind of politics of the day? You know, I don't think anyone's expecting President Obama to magically transform into, you know, a different kind of qualitatively different administration. But I thought, even given the politics of the day, he's kind of politically chosen to appeal to Republican voters who might think that the current candidates are a little bit off the wall, and that, you know, he's more seems concerned about that than he is about, you know, like, for example, any kind of direct jobs program. I don't think he mentioned anything to do with any direct stimulus spending. It's all about tax cuts.
No, of course not. Well, look, I think that the number one, I'm not a politician, so I don't know for sure, but my sense is the number one issue on which any candidate is going to win is to be credible on job creation and say, yes, we can drive the unemployment rate down to 4%, something like that. Build a full employment economy. That should be the mantra. Now, then the question is, how do we do it? Well, you and I have talked about it before. There are ways to do it, in part through public spending, but in part through forcing the private sector to use the funds that they are sitting on. And I don't understand why that should not be a political winner. That should be something where we say, let's give opportunities to small businesses to start getting credit and start investing in job creation, accompanying investing in the public sector, for example, strengthening investments in education, strengthening investments in the green economy. That's the way through which we're going to pull the economy unemployment rate down in the range that is decent.
But that plan you've proposed, and we'll put the video of our interview about your plan right below this video, so you can go see this plan fleshed out a little more. But the plan you propose means leaning on the banks and big corporations that are sitting on mountains of cash. And he doesn't seem to want to lean on any of those people.
Well, they are sitting ducks. I mean, why wouldn't you want to lean on the banks when they're getting money for free? When Ben Bernanke announced that the Fed is going to extend its zero interest rate policy for the banks through 2014, banks get money for free. They get all the money they want for free. Now, when are we going to start saying, okay, banks, in exchange for this extraordinary gift we're giving you, you have to be part of the solution of reviving the economy through job creation. That's the one thing that certainly is missing from what Obama has said.
And as you say, it would have been incredibly popular. Even the people that are supporting Gingrich, I mean, Gingrich is getting his support to a large extent with a rhetorical anti-big capitalist, anti-elite message. There'd even be support there, one would think. But I guess the why has to do with a lot of Obama's financing for his election campaigns coming from Wall Street. So.
Well, of course, the mainstream Democrats and the mainstream Republicans obviously all hover around Wall Street for money, and that's the problem. And the struggle is to push them in the direction of doing things good for job creation and for people. That is the struggle, and the money is sitting there. I mean, Bernanke is essentially acknowledging this very central point, that we have the financial resources to achieve a recovery, and he's doing step one, which is putting out money cheaply, next to nothing, to get the economy back in a strong recovery mode. But what they're not doing is forcing the financial institutions to do anything with this opportunity they've been given. To me, that is the fundamental problem facing any decent recovery.
Thanks for joining us, Bob.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.